Talk about the legacy of Bo Ryan and why it will probably never be matched at the University of Wisconsin. Coming up next with a great guest, Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Truly appreciate everybody tuning in. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Tremendous guest today. We're bringing in Assistant Athletic Director Patrick Herb, who's been on the show, I think, 4 times now. Always a tremendous guest. I actually showed you this comment. I want to lead off with this. Patrick Herb is a tremendous guest. Raffle off tickets, have a beer with them to talk Badgers. Proceeds can go to NIL. That's from William. I did mention you were coming on the show, so people submitted comments. What do you think? NIL opportunity here.
I think that's really on brand to ask to have a beer. I do enjoy beer. I'm in. Let's go. I got plenty to say, and we can use all the NIL help we can get. I know that.
I love it. I want to talk about Bo Ryan. You and I exchanged messages previously, obviously recently into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, well-deserved. Also coming to town this weekend, huge weekend with Arizona coming in. The Final Four teams are here. I just want to start with kind of the lead. What is Bo Ryan's legacy? How would you answer that question?
His legacy, I would say, has deep roots across our state, first of all. Like I think Badgers and that part, but I think his impact on our state is way beyond that. Clearly his work in Platteville, he is immortalized in Southwest Wisconsin. But I think his legacy for Badger related is taking a program that was the plucky, like try hard, pretty okay team, even though they had broken through to that Final Four. It was still, that year's team was 500. The next year, they first round exit in the tournament, took them to blue blood status in college basketball, took Wisconsin basketball to a whole different stratosphere. And I would have said he would have done that even before the back-to-back Final Fours, just by the way he dominated the league. Like, that's the right word. Dominated the Big Ten from a program who had very little Big Ten conference success in the 60 years prior. I mean, it's staggering. The shift is staggering. So for him to win 3 regular season titles, 2 Big Ten tournament titles, and hand the reins off to another coach who went on to win 2 more Big Ten titles, like, Bo's legacy is continuing in Greg Gard. It is, like, that's undeniable. And in the guys that are coming back and helping the program, the Greg Steamsma now on staff, and anytime Frank Kaminsky does something and Sam Decker does something, like, these are people who continue his legacy.
What do you think about the Hall of Fame journey? Eventually you got there. What was that like? Was that a culmination? And then the role that you played in kind of helping, I would say, maybe pave some of the information?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take a whole lot of credit for this at all. I mean, Bo Ryan is the guy who deserves to be in, and I'm really grateful that he's in. I had said all along that the work he did at Platteville and winning 4 national titles there alone should have gotten him into the Hall of Fame. You look at some of the other college coaches that are in there with 4 national titles is almost unprecedented. So that alone, we shouldn't have even had to make a campaign. Or if you want to take just his Badger output, that alone probably gets you in the highest winning percentage in conference history, Big Ten conference history. Like I said, the 5 Big Ten championships, that alone probably, in the back-to-back Final Fours, that might merit it as well. So the combination of those, to me, was a no-brainer, and actually frustrating that we had to sort of lobby for it. So he was a finalist originally in 2015. And I remember that being really cool that Wisconsin's in the Final Four. They're announcing the Hall of Fame class at the Final Four. This is going to be really amazing if he gets in. And then he doesn't. Okay, that's fine. But he was on the ballot. I'm like, all right, he's at least now he's in the conversation. And he was a finalist for, I think, 3 straight years, and then fell off. And he didn't make finalist status from 2019 to 2023 or so. And there was an injustice. And so I give Greg Gard a lot of credit. This was a passion project of his to really work behind the scenes and figure out, how do we lobby for him? How do we get his resume, his name back in front of the people who need to, the influencers? And we found it to be really challenging in just identifying who the voters are for the Hall of Fame. It's very secretive. They keep it very tight-lipped on who is voting. The voters change year in and year out. We learned a ton about the process, which was fascinating. But sometimes voters will find out the week before the ballot, and they'll say, hey, they'll call up Grant Hill, and they'll say, Grant Hill, do you want to be a voter for the Naismith ballot next week? And he'll, wow, that's a great honor. I will. And so it rotates, it changes. It's hard to find out who. We do know that Jerry Colangelo, who's really big in NBA pro basketball circles and Team USA basketball circles, is very influential and has done a lot of work to help keep the Hall of Fame alive and fund for it. So we eventually did find as many people as we could that we knew either had a vote or knew people who had votes and would be influential. And it just started to be just a drum beat. Let's just beat the drum with the people who we can, get some letters of recommendation from Hall of Famers that are currently in to lobby for Bo, and then just like speak it into the conversation every chance we get, keeping it alive on social media. Whenever the current team is on television, let's make sure the announcers bring that up and it's top of mind for them of like, oh, wow, yeah, Bo Ryan's not in the Hall of Fame. He should be. You saw Greg Gard sometimes use his post-game interviews live on CBS, use that as an opportunity to lobby for Bo. So there was a lot of strategic planning behind what can we do to kind of build that groundswell. And what I have found kind of rewarding, other than him getting in, is we have now heard from a handful of other people who are looking to, how'd you do it? What are your tips? How do we get so-and-so? How do we get so-and-so? Because there are many other college coaches that are not in that probably deserve it. And because we found that out, that it's really heavily skewed towards professional basketball, to the NBA in particular. So if you don't have that background, it's a little bit tough to break through. Like a guy like John Beilein comes to mind. He was at Michigan for a long time, but his resume is similar to Bo. He worked at every level of college basketball, and then did amazing things at West Virginia and Michigan. But his professional career actually was a kind of a failure with the Cavs. But he's not in the Hall of Fame and probably deserves to be. So is he the next guy that Michigan, whoever the Beilein family can lobby for?
I feel like this could be an entire episode, and there's other things we want to get to.
I'm long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. In the course of you speaking, I had like 3 or 4 other questions that just popped up out of this conversational trail. And one of them is, and I'm sorry if I don't know this, maybe this was put out. Did you unofficially find out beforehand at a certain point that he was in, and then it was kind of officially released? What was that like when you first, they were like, yes, he's in?
I remember when I first, Bo called me to say, I just want to let you know I get in and thanks for what you did. So like he did not have to do that. I felt really honored that he did that. He was emotional about it. So he got a call saying like, hey, congrats, coach, you're in. You need to keep this really quiet, but so don't go tell a lot of people. But he called a few people and told them. And that was a little bit before the announcement of it. So yeah, there's a ceremonial call that he gets to say he's going to be inducted.
I'm really curious, and again, share as much as you want to share or not share, obviously, because I know there's people involved. But was during the course of lobbying, did you ever get any pushback and say, well, we understand the case you're making, but no, for this reason? Was there ever anything? Was there a back and forth at any point, or was it more just information share?
No, and somewhat frustratingly so. There was no give and take. It was a one-way stream of let's push. And thankfully, I guess we never met any resistance, but we also never heard any feedback of like, yeah, you guys are doing the right thing. This is good. Or, hey, back off. We don't want to be pressured. So that was a little bit kind of like feeling around in the dark kind of, but no, there was no pushback.
Yeah. One of the things I've always been curious with Bo, I think the consistency, and I talked about that with Josh Gosser was on the show the other day, top 4 finish every year, just to do this correct thing every time over and over again. How do you think that would have translated in just today's era of basketball? You've probably gotten that question before, but it's a different era. But Bo is a generational coach. Where do you think that would have translated to this era of college basketball with Bo Ryan?
I've thought about this from time to time, like how he in particular would survive in this framework. And I think there's a thought that Bo could never coach in this era of basketball, and I say that's totally inaccurate. Yes, he was rigid in his ways and stubborn on things. He's also brilliant basketball mind, and he would find a way to adapt. Like I have no doubt that yes, he'd be frustrated by certain things, but we all are. But he'd have found a way to take whatever the parameters are, changing all the time, and then figure out, all right, you tell me what my pieces are, and I'll build the puzzle. Like that's the way he did things. That's the way he built his offensive scheme, his defensive scheme. His recruiting was all about, what do I have? All right, how do I make these guys win? Like I often thought he was the type of coach that you've heard this saying before, but he could take his 5 guys and beat you, and then he could probably go into the other locker room and take your 5 guys and then beat his guys, just because of the things that he emphasized and the way he thought about the game. So that's a little bit off topic. I think he could have survived, frustrated as he may have been. What were we talking about? I lost my train of thought, though.
No, that was it. Yeah, that was completely it. And I agree with you. Here's the thing. Let me ask this. We have to take a quick break, but I'm going to ask you this question first and then get to your answer after the break. I think one of the things Bo did incredibly well was build a culture of winning, accountability. And I actually think that's rarer now. And his ability to build culture would have actually made this team stand out even more in today's era of college basketball. It would have been more of a competitive advantage. I'm curious what your take on that is coming up next on Locked On Badgers. Plus, I want your first impressions of Bo. What were your first impressions when you first met him? I know he was here kind of before your era, so I want that next as well. Coming up on Locked On Badgers with the great Patrick Erb, who I'm honored and humbled to have on the show. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends over at FanDuel. Talked about FanDuel a lot. It's the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. As always, please do it responsibly. But it is the perfect place for parlays, futures, teasers, spreads, whatever it is. Badgers right now, 14.5-point dogs at home at night. Oregon's played 8 straight games without a bye. They kind of played with their foot a little bit last week against Maryland. A lot of public money is going on Oregon, which usually means a cover for Wisconsin. I'm just saying. I'm just going to put that out into the ecosystem. Right now, we're at FanDuel. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, let's jump back into this conversation with Patrick. Again, always humbled to have Patrick on the show. Yeah, what are your thoughts on maybe Bo having even more of a competitive advantage in the way basketball is now?
I agree that culture is probably more important now to establish than ever before because it's so hard. I was watching the Champions Classic last night a little bit, and Kentucky's playing Duke, and they were referencing how Kentucky had 0 returning impact players on the team. 0. And yes, that's extreme because the coach left, I guess, but still, even having 0 is outrageous. And you'd be naive to think that you're not going to have turnover. And so on any team, on any coach, I think Marquette's one of the outliers. Like, they've done a really good job of kind of keeping their core group, as hard as it is for me to say positive things about Marquette. But I think about that. Yes, culture was strong for him, but I don't know if it's impossible probably to recreate what his programs had and the get old, stay old and build from within and have guys wait their turn and develop. And I think about, we're going to celebrate the 2014 and 15 teams this Friday night against Arizona and celebrate the 10-year anniversary of it. And as I've been looking back and recalling things and thinking about those teams, Aduye Dukin probably doesn't happen in this era where he's a 6'10 shooter who knows he's not going to start and maximum 20 minutes a game and says, you know what, that's okay. I'm going to play my 5th year at Wisconsin again because I like it here and we're going to win and I want to be a part of this locker room. I don't know that player sticks around these days. Not very often. Trey Jackson broke his foot midway through the season, and Wisconsin had Bronson Koenig to go right to at the point guard spot. And unbelievable that they had such a talented point guard to go to. Does Bronson Koenig stick around for his 2nd year? Because you think about it, he had that freshman year. He had a breakout freshman year. He was the best player on the floor when Wisconsin played Kentucky in the 14 Final Four and lost that heartbreaker. Kentucky had all these McDonald's All-American freshmen. The best freshman on the floor was Bronson Koenig that first half. I think he had 10 points in the first half, and he was terrific. So coming off that, does he return next year knowing that Trey Jackson is the senior starting point guard, Josh Gosser is the 2 guard? Like, I'm not going to start. I'm going to play 20 minutes a game. Does he come back? I don't know. And so
And
having that luxury of those guys,
blame him. Like, could you blame him? And to your point, would you blame a guy if he had a starting role somewhere else and the alternative was coming back to be on the bench? Like, it's a great question.
Yeah. Would I blame him is a tricky question because I don't know. That's one of those, is the grass always greener questions, and I don't know that. So AJ Store's finding that out right now at Kansas, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a starter at Wisconsin, feature player. Now he's going to Kansas. He's coming off the bench and playing 15 minutes a game. Okay, so was that the right move? It's not exactly the same as what you're talking about of a guy who's a bench player leaving, but I don't know. That each scenario is different. But anyway, I think I look back to that team, and that team was special for a million reasons. But one was because of their depth and their ability to have 8-9 guys who were selfless and bought into the same principle of not caring who gets the credit, who scores, because they're ruthless and winning a lot and having so much fun along the way. Like, that can't be lost. That team had a ton of fun while they won games, and not just because they won. They enjoyed each other's company. And I don't know, that's really, really hard to create in this era of basketball. So that was your first part of the question. Second part, my first impressions of Bo.
Yes.
So this is 2008 is when I started, and I came to Wisconsin to be the communications guy for the men's basketball team. So part of my day of interviews was to sit down with him. And so I knew him I was a fan. I went to school at Wisconsin, but I had been gone for 7 years working for the Chiefs. And so I had, the same impression that a lot of people probably did as fans, like kind of intimidated, like this guy's a mean, like serious dude. And I'm 28 years old or whatever, 29 years old at the time. And so I'm sitting down with him, and my first impression was he wanted to make sure that I was not a football guy. So he had a little bit of a big chip on his shoulder for a million reasons. But one of his chips on his shoulder was always that this is a football school. Wisconsin's a football school, and basketball is always getting second fiddle, and basketball is getting slighted for this and slighted for that. It's one of the reasons Bo was so good, is because he always found a way to like find an enemy and like find a motivator. So what he didn't want is somebody added to his program who's supposed to be representing them and selling and lobbying for them, who is football guy, football first. Yeah. So that was like, he really wanted to have a conversation about my background with the Chiefs, why I worked in football, why I wanted to come and work in basketball, what I knew about the game, what I knew about our team, our sport. And so I found that really interesting though. Like one of my first impressions of him was wanting to vet out where my allegiances kind of would lie. So that was like first impressions, I guess.
That actually, it's funny you brought that up. That leads right into a question somebody submitted. And again, I said, I put it in our Discord. Hey, I'm going to be on Patrick on the show. Got a ton of questions. We won't get to all of them. Suffice to say, you were one of the favorites that comes on the show from people. But Robert Sorensen, are you a bigger football or basketball fan? Is that impossible to answer?
Yeah, that is impossible. That's impossible. I love them both. Even like, so when I wasn't working here, I followed them both religiously. I mean, I watched every game and was super invested and would try to come back when I could. I was working in football, so I didn't get to come back to many football games as I could. I'll say this. I love both programs. There's a difference not in Wisconsin. There's a difference in basketball and with football teams in that when football travels, we got 140 people that travel, massive planes, 5 buses on the road. Like it's just this massive operation. When basketball travels, it's like 28, 30 people. And so there's a different closeness. There's just a different energy around the size and the magnitude. So in some ways you get closer to your peers, your coworkers on the basketball side. So I thoroughly love that. And when we had a lot of success too. And I've been traveling with football for 17 years now. So like I've seen a lot of success in that area too. And there's a lot more coming. I'm confident of that. That's really hard though to answer both, but they're a little different, I'd say.
No, I think a lot of fans that follow both would be in the same boat. Like I couldn't answer which one. I love both. I'm passionate about both of them. I do really quick snap question to traveling for 17 years of football. Really quickly off the top of your head, your favorite road trip and your least favorite road trip.
Football.
Yep.
Do bowl games count? Or are they a different animal?
Let's keep it
Let's throw those out because bowl games
could
be a week long, and there's all sorts of pageantry with it, like going to the Rose Bowl.
Let's throw those out.
Throw those out. It has to be a winning trip would be the best, right? Because like going out to USC earlier this year was cool. Like I thought Memorial Coliseum was neat, and being in LA, was able to go out to dinner the night before by the beach. Cool. Lost the game, it spoils it. Holy cow, this is really hard. As I get older, my recall of facts gets worse. We crushed Michigan at the Big House one year. I forget what year that was. That was really awesome. Does Lambeau Field against LSU count as a road trip?
Absolutely.
That was pretty great. That might be number one.
I was at that game. That was incredible. I was sitting next to a bunch of LSU fans that left really quickly. It was fantastic.
Big Ten championship games are kind of more like a road trip, less like a bowl game because you go the night before. So I've been in some winning Big Ten championship games. Those are pretty cool because then you have to take into effect what the post-game locker room is like, what the post-game back at the hotel, because we'd fly out the next day. So you went on the road let's say we win next week in Nebraska. You get on the plane an hour later and you're home and everybody goes their separate ways. You win in a Big Ten title game, you go back to the hotel, everybody's there. After you get your work done, everybody's celebrating in whatever fashion they choose. But you're still around, and that you get to that's the best part of my job is being around a team of people that have like a collective goal. And when it goes well, you get to celebrate together. And I don't play. I was never good enough to play. And I'm not smart enough to coach, but that's the way I can be connected to a team. So Big Ten championship games is that's a different animal too. Maybe doesn't count in your question.
I'll take it because I remember those first couple were incredible.
Winning at Minnesota 4 years ago when they were ranked in the top 15 and it was snowing and we kind of spoiled their season. They had game day there. They put everything into that game. We went up there and spoiled it. That one was pretty fun too.
Yeah, I remember that game. The snow in that game was incredible. Some of those throws and catches, just fantastic.
Defense was awesome that game.
Yep, agreed. Let me ask you this. One more quick snap question, then we got to take a break because I want to talk to you quickly about this upcoming weekend. And again, I need to be respectful of your time. I know it's a busy week for you. But one more quick question. I've asked Brandon Harrison this, asked Josh Gosser yesterday. Who's your most underrated Badgers basketball player when I ask you that? Who comes to mind for you in the last, we'll call it in the Bo Ryan era?
Do you need to take a break and can I think about it during the break?
Oh, absolutely. It's a great time for a break. Patrick's a pro, man. He's helping me out. All right, we're going to take a break, get that, and then talk about what's coming up this weekend. Huge weekend. We got Stripe Out. We got Arizona. We got Oregon. Talk about what's going on this weekend for Badger fans coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Game Time. I talk about Game Time a lot. And listen, what a time for Game Time. If you want tickets this weekend, come to the Stripe Out against Arizona. They are hanging the banner. Final Four teams are coming back together. That's going to be absolutely incredible. Or go to the night game against Oregon. What an opportunity on Game Time to find incredible tickets, incredible values, flash deals, the cheapest prices you're going to get, plus panoramic views of the seats so you know exactly what section you're going to be in, what it's going to look like. You're not going to find a better deal on tickets guaranteed over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Get the tickets without the stress. Use code LOCKEDON for $20 off over at Game Time. Get the tickets without the stress over at Game Time, the best spot for all your ticketing needs. Do more things in life. Do those things over on Game Time. Game Time, get the app, create the account, Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Let's jump back into this, finish this off with Patrick Herb again. Very, very humbled to have you on. Most underrated Badger. And just for reference, Brandon Harrison said Josh Gosser. Gosser went with John Lure.
Okay. So those guys were very highly rated. So that's why I have a hard time saying they were underrated. Like John Lure was first team All Big Ten. Josh Gosser was, I guess he didn't get the individual credits because he had so many other talented players on his team. But yeah, Josh is good. I mean, he went to 4 Sweet 16s when he was eligible, 2 Final Fours and 2 other Sweet 16s. That's ridiculous. He impacts winning. 2 that come to my mind, maybe a little more under the radar than those. Michael Flowers. I thought Michael Flowers was impacted winning in a lot of ways. When he needed to score, he could. when he needed to be a lockdown defender, he was their go-to guy. Had some flair for big plays. You know, you think of the win at Texas. The Bo Ryan is a thief. You know, not only the steal but the shot. So he's one to me that if you're going to list the top 25 Badgers of the last 25 years, he may not make your list, but he maybe should. Then the other one is a little more off the radar too. I'd say I thought Mike Bruesewitz impacted winning also. This is a guy that had good size but not tremendous, but rebounded like he was bigger than he was, could shoot better than anybody probably gave him credit for, was crafty around the rim. And he was also one of those guys that was just a pain in the neck for the other team. And I have a soft spot for those guys. It's one of the reasons I really like Brad Davison. Other teams couldn't stand him, and some of our own fans maybe got tired of him, but he impacted winning because of some of the ways that he would do small things. And I'm not talking about like dirty plays, but small things that go unnoticed, but are like winning plays. And so Mike Bruesewitz is a guy that I think comes to mind for that too.
That's a great list. And really quickly, Michael Flowers was my pick on the Discord for most. So that Texas game, he hits that three, comes back, gets that steal off the inbounds, and then chucks the ball in the air to run. Like, yes, such a winner. I love that answer. All right, let's shift to this weekend. Huge weekend. Obviously, 2 big-time opponents, plus a bunch of festivities around the basketball game with Bo Ryan and the Final Four teams coming back. I just kind of want to kick it to you. What can Badger fans expect this weekend? Anything that you kind of want to highlight? Huge opportunity this weekend for both programs.
Yeah, fun showcase for our city, our campus, our teams. That Saturday's game's on NBC, Friday's game on Peacock. So some of the same production crew is doing both games. That works great for them. Noah Eagle is the play-by-play guy, going to do both games. That's kind of fun for him to have that synergy. He's really good at his job. So you mentioned the stripe out already for Friday night's game and the reunion of the 14 and 15 teams, and Bo Ryan have his name raised into the rafters of the Kohl Center. All that's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be an awesome environment. I'm really excited about it. We owe Arizona a little bit after last year. They kind of humbled us a little bit, and there's a great history, great rivalry with Arizona. Saturday, there's a ton going on other than the main course, obviously, which is trying to beat the number 1 team in the country and have a magical night that we will remember forever. But there's the pregame tailgate in the field house is coming back. It was really popular last game against Penn State. So we're bringing that back. It's a free event where you can get food, beverages, including alcohol, music, games, giveaways. So in the field house from 4:00 till 6:30 pregame. That's fun. We're doing a military appreciation game. So there are going to be a lot of salute to service moments, including giant flag and military. There's a pregame tailgate for veterans, and we've got a ton of tickets out that we've given to veterans. And so there'll be some nods there. We're going to recognize the 14 and 15 basketball teams at the football game and kind of they'll get a great ovation Friday, and they'll get 75,000 people patting them on the back the next night. It's a red out, so nobody should have trouble finding red in their closets. We've got a student giveaway that's kind of fun, and I'm hoping that it encourages students to get in there a little early because we don't have enough for everybody. So it's while supplies last. And so those students that come in late and those seats at the top that are empty at kickoff that we always get frustrated by, they will not get the student giveaway. It's a hat that has like the foldable ears that come down. It's actually pretty cool. It's like kind of like a nod to duck hunting a little bit, that we're playing Oregon. But it's like a nice quality thing that the students are going to get fired up about. So I hope that gets them in early. If they're watching this, don't be the last one in. You won't get one. And then the last thing is we got a ton of alumni coming back, including Melvin Gordon. And we're going to be celebrating the 10-year anniversary of his 408-yard game against Nebraska, which happened in 2014. Still one of the most mind-boggling performances that we have ever seen. Had 408 yards in 3 quarters. He didn't play the fourth quarter. Yep. And the first quarter was somewhat forgettable. He had a couple fumbles. Like it was one of the legendary. So anyway, he's coming back, including a whole bunch of his teammates from that 2014 team are going to be in attendance too. And we're going to give him his flowers and really kind of have fun with that too. So tons of things going on that are like just a Badger Pride Fest. And then hopefully we find a way to play some good basketball and some good football and surprise some people.
Yeah, I absolutely love it, man. And we'll wrap up here because I've already kept you for a little longer than I normally try to. But you couldn't time up the Melvin Gordon thing with Nebraska, a Nebraska game, maybe like last year or this next coming year. I know we're at Nebraska this season, but
it's the 10-year anniversary, so it's like a round number. Yeah. We could have done it last year as the 9-year, or next year as 11, but that's kind of weird. I wanted to call Nebraska and ask if we could honor him next week at their place, but I didn't think that they'd be receptive to that.
No, you're totally right. Like if Nebraska had just been able to stay in that game, like Melvin plays the fourth quarter, and he ends up with 520. Like the number, and of course his record gets broken the next week by it plays 4 quarters against a trash team.
So Ryan, is that who broke it? Right?
Yes. They played like Kansas when Kansas was terrible or some nonsense. Yeah. So ton to look forward to this weekend. Just one kind of last message, just on the football side. I know it feels like Wisconsin was so you had the Penn State game, which you referenced earlier. That's a 14-13 game going into the fourth quarter. And then Iowa happens, and it feels like we're not that far. We're 3 weeks removed from playing a great Penn State team at home in a night environment down to the nail. I think that can happen again. And you see the line. I think maybe the Iowa game was just a bad data point. I don't know. Do you sense a different energy or vibe going into the Oregon weekend than you did going into the Penn State weekend? That's kind of a rambling question, but
yeah, I mean there are things that are different about that game and this one. Wisconsin had won 3 straight going into Penn State, so like that inherently, I think from an outside excitement and confidence, that was maybe a little different than right now. We're also coming off a bye week, so there's been like a 2-week lapse of games that we didn't have the bye prior to Penn State. So I do think it feels different. And no question, when you get kind of humbled at Iowa, like there's a little bit of soul searching that happens. And Luke Fickell has referenced that gave us a chance to like self-examine and say like, I wasn't good enough. He wasn't good enough. We all like, why? All right. And how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? Cause that was bad. And like we can say that, like, that was not good. And it ran counter to what we've seen this team. Like they got thumped against Alabama. All right, that was early in the season, lost their quarterback. Like, I'm not excusing it, but you can explain that one away a little bit. Iowa won tough to explain away, and it feels a little more like an outlier than the rest of the games this season. Like, yes, they've lost games at USC and Penn State, but they've unfolded differently than that game did, right? And even that one, 0-0 after first quarter. It's not like from the jump it was bad. So I think I don't know. I am optimistically thinking and hoping that this bye week allowed for some introspection, allowed for them to kind of get back to some core things, decompress for a minute, ramp it back up. The energy was great at practice last night. It was like they're still working hard. They know there's a lot to play for this season. Like not only just the opportunity that they have to play number 1, but all the other things that go with it, of playing for a bowl, playing for a winning season, playing for rivalry trophies coming up, playing for your spot on the team next year. Like that's a real thing in today's era of where am I going to be? And knowing that this roster limits are coming next year that aren't here now. This team has to get to 105 for next season, where they're over that now. And so there's a lot at stake and for these last 3 weeks, that even though from an outside world, maybe confidence like, oh, we're 2 touchdown underdogs and whatever. That's not the sense in the building. I know that.
He is the great Patrick Herb. Always humble to have him on the show. I know you got a bunch going on this week, so we'll let you go here. But we will remind everybody, potential NIL opportunity with beer with Patrick Herb. We'll think about it. We'll see what we can do. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Patrick, as always, thank you for your time. On Wisconsin, and Badger fans, make sure to get to Madison this weekend, right? You have the stripe out on Friday, honoring some absolute legends. Then the big game on Saturday. Not a lot of opportunities to host number 1 at night in Camp Randall. On Wisconsin, appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll talk later.